everyone, and thank you for joining us today from 6 continents and more than 40 countries. This is our 4th virtual coffee for Confined Yogis. The vision for our virtual coffee is to create a global community of yogis, looking to each other for wisdom in this uncertain time of global pandemic. Wisdom to help us navigate the highs and the lows of this global crisis. My hope is that by hearing voices from our senior Iyengar teachers from all over the world, we will refine our yoga philosophy tool and learn together how to maintain, deepen, and strengthen our sadhana, our practice in this period of confinement. It is together, through practice and reflection, that wisdom is created. Today, our guest is Virgil Mehta, who is coming from Mumbai. Virgil Mehta is one of the most senior teachers in the Iyengar method. He's an engineer by profession and a yogi by passion. He started his yogic career as a teenager with his family. He is known for his ability to help yogis from all over the world attain their potential. So we are grateful today to have Mr. Virgil Mehta speaking to us. So without further ado, let us welcome our guest. I just want to say that there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you just at the end of the session, just lift your virtual hand and we will unmute you at that time. So Mr. Virgil Mehta, today listening to you is a global community of yogis. So would you like to tell us something about your current situation in Mumbai regarding the COVID and confinement? What it is like to be in Mumbai in those days?
Yes, I will, Rahel. But before we start, can I just take your permission to recite the invocation to Sage Patanjali and to the Guru?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what I would urge, I will give the reason why I am going to be doing this a bit later. But those of you who have attended the yoga classes anywhere, you would be familiar with the invocation. And if you can, I would urge you to recite along with me. See that you are muted so that only you can participate and the rest cannot hear. Okay? Oh. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi abahu purushakaram shankha chakrasidharinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami patanjalim. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om. So, Rahel, before I start to answer your question about what's happening in Mumbai, since I started with the invocation, I would just like to just give a background of why I did what I did. Absolutely. Now, we are all here today to basically sort of communicate with each other, converse with each other. And it is important to understand what perspective I have of communication. Now, essentially, the usual goal of communication is to have the very thoughts that I, as a speaker, have in my brain to be communicated to you so that you will have the same thoughts in your brain. So essentially, sort of setting up the thoughts in your brain of those very thoughts which are in my brain, that is the purpose of communication. Now, how do we achieve this communication in a normal condition, in a normal situation? the normal mode of communication is that I have certain, what I would call complex symbolic dance going on within my brain. What do I mean by symbolic dance? Symbolic dance is where I could be thinking about a particular object, which is a symbol, and that would fire and trigger some network, neural network within my brain, or an associated network within my brain, and so on and so forth, one after the other. If I were to be, just for your entertainment, a little pictorious about it, I would say that there are flashing of lights happening all over my brain as my thought starts to work. And essentially, what I intend to do when I communicate, to have a similar such dance of symbols within your brain. How is it done? This is done that my complex symbols within my brain are sort of compressed into something what we call words, or essentially sound, or some visual signs. Your brain takes those sounds and visual signs and then, in a sense, decompresses them so that the same sort of symbolic dance happens in your brain. So essentially, the reason for communicating is so that both of us can have the same symbolic dance in our brains, and that would be perfect communication. Now, we may think that these thoughts, which are basically the symbolic dance happening between your brain and mine, are restricted to objects, situations, maybe complex perspective. We can be talking about philosophy, so all these things. But essentially, I would add that whatever I sense in my brain in terms of my mental, psychomental states, happiness, quietness, sanctity, piety, all these things can be made to go into your brain through a very good set of communication. And that is exactly what it is. If I sense goodness, and if I am able to communicate properly, and if I'm an expert at communication, goodness will be felt by you. Now, why did I talk to you about reciting the invocation at the start? Most of you would have attended the yoga class. I could see quite a few of you here who would have attended the yoga class, and they would attend the yoga class by coming from different places. And once they gather into the hall at the start of the class, they would do the recitation. And in their mind, this recitation has got an associated behavior of getting yourself focused, quietened, into the yogic way of thinking. So this is exactly what happens when I start the invocation and when you started the invocation together with me. In your mind, the associated condition of being in a class, getting yourself into a kind of a pious state would have happened. So this is a form of communication whereby all of us together are at the same starting point. You know, in the language of management type people, they would call it getting onto the same page. So essentially, by saying the recitation, by speaking out the recitation, we are not all coming to the same page, and all our minds are now focused to this act of yoga. Now, before I can answer your question, I would still, because I've already started this, I would like to go a little bit further and say that when we talk of Guruji, why was he such a great master? Why was he such a great guru? It is because of two things. One, he was a wonderful communicator. He could communicate using not only his words, his eyes, signals, signs, but his hands also. So with all that, he was able to communicate what was the state of his mind. Now, what we need to understand is that most of us think yoga teaching or teaching yoga is about giving the right instructions as to how you have to do the pose, how you have to master the pose. But the fact of the matter, teaching of yoga is a little different. First of all, the teacher of yoga has to get the state of what he himself feels in his mind, in his brain, that he has to communicate to the students. That is the purpose of yoga. And to be a good teacher, you need to have the skills whereby you are able to sort of create any mental state on the fly. So at a moment's notice, you want to change your mental state, you should have the skills to change that mental state, which was here with Guruji. Because with his long practice, he was able to understand that certain movements in his physical body would result into a certain state of the mind. That's the first part. Having acquired that certain state of the mind, he could communicate that state to a person who is studying with him, and therefore the student could experience the state of the mind, which would be of a kind of something which is highly enhanced, something which is very refined. So if I were to say the psychomental state at two ends, one is a refined state of a yogi, and one is the state which is of a debased state of a lay person. He would reach that refined state and then communicate that state into the brain of the person who is the student there. And therefore you find many people coming out of the class and says, my God, I had a divine experience. My God, I felt like I was flying. So essentially, the beauty of a good teacher is, one, to be able to get into his brain the right, what you would call state of the mind, refined state of the mind. And the second step is to communicate it to the students. And that's the reason why in Iyengar yoga, it's not just sufficient to be able to do the postures. It's not sufficient to be able to give the information of how the posture needs to be done. But what is important is that you should be able to quickly get that state of the mind, which is of a refined quality, and use the communication to get that refined quality in the brain of the student. Now, how do you get this refined state translated, transmitted, or communicated to the student? Unlike words, unlike signs, this can be done by adjusting your body in a particular manner. And I will just give an example which all yoga students, especially those who are Iyengar students, will recognize very quickly. Guruji used a term which in dictionary sense or lexical sense doesn't have any meaning, okay? But I can assure that all the teachers are using that, and all the students would have heard that. One of them is, open your chest. Now, what is that meaning? What's the lexical meaning of opening your chest? But the moment you open your chest, certain mental states start to change. You become very courageous. You would not be feeling low. You would not be feeling frustrated. The moment you open your chest, roll the shoulders back, move the shoulder blades inside, take the shoulder blades forward. So all these things create that state of the mind. And Guruji has used such words, which are his own creation, which outside of the community, people will not be able to appreciate. But as students, we'll appreciate that. So that's the background I wanted to give. Basically, that as a good yoga teacher, you need to have two things. One, the ability to get that state of mind on call. Second, to be able to communicate it. And essentially, what we have just done is we have referred ourselves to what we do in the beginning of the class so that we are all the same page. Now, coming to your question, well, we are all stuck up here in Mumbai in our houses from the 20th of March. So it is now 2 months and 10 days that we have shut up. And I think we would be shut up for another period of 1 month, but probably there would be some things opening up. So we would be able to go out and probably do some little bit work here and there. But otherwise, I think overall the people in Mumbai are not really stressed out, because if you think that there are some 30,000-40,000 odd people who have contacted COVID, the population is something like roughly 15 million. So that's a small number compared to the people that we have here.
So let me ask you, how did you come to yoga? You started by talking about Guruji as your guru. So that brings us two questions to my mind. How did you come? How did you start? How did your journey start? And when did Mr. Iyengar became Guruji for you?
Okay, so I have been lucky that my first yoga teacher was Guruji Yogacharya V.K.S. Iyengar. So that was it way back in 1974 at the age of 16. I started to attend this class in Mumbai. That was because my father was already a student and he decided that it was good for me and my elder sister Nita, who is in Cupertino, that we should join the class. So that was in 1974. So that's how I joined the class. I had no idea about yoga, no interest in yoga. I was a school student and well, you went to the class. But definitely within a few months, I was in the gravity of Guruji. So at that point in time, there was no question of moving away from what has happened. So I continued to then study. I went to engineering college to get my professional education. And in the meantime, I continued to attend the weekend classes when Guruji came to Mumbai. So I would come back home, attend the class. And this happened until, let's say, around 1982, when there was a turning point wherein Guruji asked me to sort of assist him in the Saturday class, which he took in Mumbai, and I was attending the Sunday class. And for those of you who do not know Guruji, I would just give you how he asked me to sort of assist him. So on one Sunday class, after the class was over, he came to me and says, "What do you do on Saturday?" I said, "Sir, I have a holiday on Saturday because my work is only from Monday to Friday." But then he looked around and sternly and said, "Have you no shame?" I said, "What does he mean by that? Have you no shame?" So I just looked at him and asked him, I don't understand. So he says, "Here I am, an old man, working so hard, and you should be working hard, are enjoying yourself and resting." I said, "But what do I do?" He says, "Come on Saturday class and assist me." So that was my journey, the start of my journey in teaching. Although I didn't start to teach for another 5 years. So it so happened that in 1984, first International Iyengar Yoga Convention was held in San Francisco, where people from all over the world came to this particular place, and there were a group of around 800 yoga students who are actually taking classes from various teachers from various parts of the world, and they got a taste of all the teachings. And before and after that, Guruji was to attend a lot of places in the United States, in Canada, and in UK. And some of Guruji's students thought that since Guruji is going for such a long period of travel, it might help to have a couple of young people to assist him in his travels. And therefore, my senior colleague Jawar Bangera, who is also on this call, and myself were asked to assist Guruji during his tours. And although I think our competence was only to be good baggage boys, basically, I don't think we really had it in us to be of great help to him. So it was just like, okay, fine, because he was traveling and he had his bags, you sort of ensured that they get loaded on the flight. Anyway, what happened then was that during this course of our travel, because we were his assistants, we were also put up in the same house. And therefore, the moment Guruji got up, he would make his coffee ready. Then when he did his pranayam practice, he would do pranayam practice or fake pranayam practice. Jawar would do it, I would fake it, just want to go to sleep. Anyway, after that, when he did his asana practice, he would be doing the asana practice. When he had his breakfast, he would be having the breakfast. If there was a class, he would go for the class and we would be studying behind him. And, when the class was over, when it was time for lunch or time for sightseeing or time for shopping or time for seeing the sights in the place we have been, we would be all there with him until the time he went off to sleep. So essentially, we were shadowing him virtually throughout the day. And this went on because the tour was for around 1.5 months. Later on, same thing happened in 1987 when the first North American Iyengar Yoga conference was held in Harvard, the place you are in. And also in 1990, 1993, in 1992, we went to the Far East with Guruji. Many places in India, we traveled with him, gave demonstrations in the, there used to be something like a festival of yoga in India, that was a place where Guruji went, you would be following him and so on and so forth. We would, of course, be going to Pune. So therefore, we had this kind of a experience of being in a Gurukul. In India, there is the student goes to the house of the teacher and then learns. And they are there throughout with the teacher. So apart from the subject which they learn about life. And that's what happened to us. So because of this Gurukul, we almost went to the Gurukul, although it was all over the world. And that's how we became very, very close to Guruji. Mm-hmm. So this is the relationship we had, with our Guru. So he was not just a teacher of yoga for us, but he was a teacher for life. Does that answer you, Ray?
Yeah, it does answer. So for us, the idea of guru is not very clear. So my question was, so from teacher to guru, what? Yes. So for you, from teacher, what are you telling us is that teacher and guru was connected integrally. There was no so much move. But for us, a guru is a very difficult context. So is there a time that you can tell us a little bit about what it means to have a guru like Mr. Guruji, like Mr. Iyengar?
Yes. So what happens is, when I look at teacher, the word teacher, if I were to translate into the Sanskrit term, it would be adhyapak. So the adhyapak is more like an instructor. So if you are going for a particular subject, you want to learn about a particular subject, then you would go to a teacher and the teacher would teach you the subject. Now, there is another word which has been used, which is upadhyay, which is a little higher category than a teacher, because the teacher is just teaching the subject. The upadhyay is actually doing a little bit more in terms of giving you knowledge apart from information. And then, of course, you have acharya, who basically gives you the necessary skills, whose life actually reflects what he says. But what happens is, in all these things, the teacher, the instructor, the adhyapak, upadhyay, acharya, they are actually teaching you certain skills which are sort of pertaining to the outer world, pertaining to the daily walks of life, pertaining to your vocation, pertaining to your profession. But the yoga is one where it is whereby he lights a kind of the lamp within you, so that you start to recreate the whole subject which he has taught you without him having to give you the details. It is as if he opens up within you the ability to continue the search, whether he is present in body form or whether he is present in just the unmanifested form. So that's the difference. That even now that he's no longer present and available to us to ask a question, it is something which we just need to get into, and then sort of we find that the answer comes. I have experienced it, that there are times when many of the teachers whom I sort of speak to, at one point in time, they got the very same idea. Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's what Guru is all about. And this concept is that he's no longer a teacher, but he guides your life. And because we are following him throughout the day and night kind of thing, we actually learned about life from him.
I see. So that brings me to my next question. What is the most important teaching that Guruji gave you that you think is relevant to what's happening now with our confinement, our situation of crisis globally?
Okay.
Is my question clear?
I would not say Guruji would have given, what you're saying is, so I'll try to answer that. What I would say is Guruji has not really sort of given that in this time of pandemic, this is what you need to do. But what has happened is that because he's a guru, he has sort of lit up the idea in terms of, what should the reaction be? And this is something which I learned from within. Essentially, it is, like I told you, that, there are times when all of us start to get the same thoughts, the same ideas. So this is exactly what I would like to do, is like to tell you what I have felt in the pandemic. And probably that will give the answer as to what sort of the light within me has given, the light which he has lit has given me.
Yeah.
So the pandemic has been a little different. Basically, what has happened is there's been a complete disruption of your normal walk of life, right? So because of this disruption, what makes us possible is that we can have our own leisurely practice. We can have our own leisurely practice, if one can understand that. Because you don't have to go anywhere, your approach to the practice, although you may have been practicing for many years, becomes a little different. Now, what happened in my case was in this leisurely practice, suddenly I discovered that I am able to do poses for a long time, very long time. Such times that even in my previous 45 years of practice, there are so many poses which I have not done for so long. So that begets a question, how do you stay in the pose for a long period of time? Now, what I'm going to tell you, I'll try to give a logical sequence to that, but believe me, that's not how it actually occurred in my mind. You know, my mind was seeing a lot of things, but overall now, since I'm presenting it to you, I would give a logical sequence, but that's not exactly how it happened. The question is, how can you stay long? Very simple, don't come out of the pose. If you don't come out of the pose, you are going to be there staying for a long time. But then why do we come out of the pose? That becomes a question. Now, why do I come out of the pose at other times? There are certain reasons. First reason is I come out of the pose because of pain, dukkha. Another reason I come out of the pose is because I don't feel joyful in that state. Dormanasya, lack of joy. Third reason I come out of the pose is because there is shakiness in the pose. I don't have the balance to continue in the pose. Angame jayatva. And the fourth one is the heaviness of breathing, shwasa, prashwasa. So these are the four conditions which are talked about in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the first chapter. These are what comes with the disturbances, right? So these are the 4 points which I see it as coming. So when you are in a posture, these 4 points are the ones which makes you go out of the asana. Now let's look at the opposite of dukkha, unhappiness, pain. It is sukha. What is the opposite of angamay jayatva? That is shakiness. That is stability, sthira. So when you are not in that state of dukkha, dormanasya, angamay jayatva, spasa, prashwasa, you are in the state of sukha and sthiram, and that becomes asana. Mm-hmm. So when you are not in the state of sukham, sthiram, you come out, you are in these 4 disturbances. Mm-hmm. And when you are not in the four states of disturbances, you are actually in the state of an asana. Mm-hmm. Now, what does one do? Now, I will not talk as to why you need to stay long. That will become obvious as I continue my discussion with you. But what happens is...
You just make your mic is not... People have been telling me that they don't hear you well. Can you just make your mic...
Yeah? Is it better now?
Yes, it's better, much better. Thank you.
Okay. So the question is, now, what do I need to do so that I don't have these 4 states? The easiest is, can I adjust myself and get into the posture in such a manner that my breath becomes very soft and silent? And when I say silent, it is from the auditory perspective, that I am so silent, my breath is so silent that it cannot be heard even by me. When your breath becomes silent, the other 3 also become quietened, and therefore you are able to stay in the pose for a longer time. Now that gets me to a point, as you know, everybody feels that they have got a certain capacity to do an asana. When you say you have a certain capacity to an asana, you say, I can do Shirshasana for 10 minutes. I can do Sarvangasana for 10 minutes. Now here is where the people make a mistake. People think their capacity is determined by the chronological time. I would like to put a proposition that the ability to stay in the pose is determined by the number of disturbances you can absorb. Now, if you can have 20 disturbances in 10 minutes, which you can, if you can absorb 20 disturbances, and these 20 disturbances happen in a period of 10 minutes, you will be able to stay in the pose for 10 minutes. But if the disturbances are further spread out, so that let's say once you get into the pose, you try to observe that you settle into a pose when the breath has become absolutely silent. And because of this, you are able to get the disturbances to be only 5 disturbances in the first 5 minutes, right? Then you still have the capacity for 15 minutes. And therefore, after 5 minutes, now your total capacity to stay in the pose has become 20 minutes. Although at the start, it was only 10 minutes. And if by this way, if you further reduce the number of disturbances for the next 5 minutes to be only 3, that means in the 10 minutes, you have got only 8 disturbances. That means the next 12 disturbances can be spread over another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So after 10 minutes, now your capacity to stay in the pose has become 30 minutes. Now, you know something? When this particular condition, wherein as you age, your life expectancy increases. Now, this is something which is not really easy to follow. If my life expectancy was, say, 50 years, after 40 years, it should be only 10. But if as I age, if my life expectancy increases, they have a term for it, which is called anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is something which has been coined by Taleb, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, in his book, Anti-Fragile. So in case of anti-fragile, what happens is that a person, actually, when there are such events, such disturbances, they become stronger. Normally, when a person is fragile, when such disturbances come in, they become disturbed and they become, their life expectancy reduces. Here, our life expectancy increases. But this is essentially what makes you anti-fragile. Yes, please.
So Birjoo, that brings me to ask you the question: how does asana, which you say we need to stay as long as we can in asana or explore that length, leads to transformation or leads to healing? Why do we do that? We do that for something, for transformation, for healing. So how does it happen?
Okay. So what happens is that as you stay in the pose, spontaneously, not through willpower. And I told you that spontaneously, if the disturbances start to reduce, you'll be able to stay in the pose for longer. So why are you staying spontaneously? Because it is making you feel good. Because it is healing you. You are able to stay not because of willpower, because of the inherent healing, which makes you stronger. So therefore, a transformation takes place at the mental level or at the level of the chitta. The transformation takes place, but at the same time, this transformation also has a healing effect on your body. It makes you anti-fragile, right? So now what is the transformation which happens? Now, when you start staying in the pose for a longer and longer time, you sort of lose the sense of time. Chronological time is lost. There is no differences. And what does that mean? When the chronological time has become slow and stopped, it has a big change. Now, to give you an example, if I take a picture of a ball being thrown up and then dropping down, I have a quick shutter speed camera which takes the pictures of this ball. Now, I take these pictures, make a copy of them, and then I would just shuffle them and give it to you. And I ask you, can you put it in a sequential manner of time? Which, you know, the pictures in a sequential manner. You will be able to do it, right? But if I keep it on, if I keep a ball on a flat surface so that it's not moving, take a picture in the same set of time, then I take these pictures, the hard copy of the picture, shuffle them and give it to you. Would you be able to do that? No, you will not be able to do it because there is no change in time. Now, there is a connection between time and ego. So when you say that you have memory, if you say you have ego, is essentially, I could say it is smruti, which is much more than memory. So, you know, if I were to ask you, who are you? You will be able to trace your narrative history from the time you were maybe 3 or 4 when your mind started to work all the way up to now. So that becomes a narrative history, which makes you what you are. But if there was no narration of that, what would happen? You would not be able to have that sense of I. So the ball which is thrown up and comes down, you will be able to give a narrative history of that ball. But if the ball is static, there'll be no narrative history. So when the time stops, it is just there, you sort of forget who you are. And this comes in 2 chapters of the Yoga Sutras. It comes in the first chapter when it talks about smriti, that is memory, or smriti is much more than memory, of course. So smriti parishuddho, when that is cleansed, there is swarupa shunya. You don't sense that I. Similarly, I think in the 3rd chapter also, in Dhyana, he talks about samadhi being smriti, being what he called swarupa shunya. So there is no sense of I. Now, when there is no sense of I, what happens is there is no. Yes, please. Let me complete this. Yeah, let us just complete this.
No,
so just let me complete. So when there is no sense of I, there is no sense of not of I. So you become much more wider than your limited self. So that is the transformation which comes about, which we talk about as Niruddha Parinam, then we talk about Samadhi Parinam, and we talk finally about Ekagrata Parinam. That Ekagrata Parinam is what happens. So this is the benefit at the chitta level, and of course, benefit of healing which comes from the level of the body. Yes, please.
So this transformation and this time changing the feeling of times so that the time becomes wide.
Yes.
And creates healing brings me to the question of uncertainty, of today's uncertainty. So a lot of people today in this world have been feeling uncertain of what's happening, and we are more aware of the uncertainty of our life. People are anxious, people are afraid, not only from the virus, but from geopolitical issues that are happening all over the world. How should a yogi behave and work with this feeling of anxiety, this feeling of fearfulness, and this feeling of uncertainty that is now really in our awareness so strongly?
Okay. So in these times, there are 2 things which are very important. One is dharma, the duty, and the second one is compassion. Now we have an idea that compassion is of one type, that we should have empathy for the person.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm going to talk about is that the compassion should be based on your dharma. Now, if you are a doctor or if you are in the health services, what is your duty is to go out and help the people. If you are in an administrative position, your dharma is to go out and help in sort of ensuring that food gets distributed or whatever is there. That's what your duty is. So we should know what is your dharma. What are you? Are you a health worker? Are you an administrator? Or are you just somebody who is going to do charity and give, let's say, food or other items to the people, masks and other things, in which case you better be out. But if you are not any one of these which requires to go out, and if you are only going to be in way of other people, getting in the way, then your dharma should be to be at home. Don't get in the way. It depends on what your dharma is. I will come to that, your basic questions which you have asked. I will answer this while I talk about this as compassion related to dharma. So once you are in the house, there are various things one can do. Like for example, one of our yoga students, a teacher from Reading in United Kingdoms, by the name of Uday Bhosle, he ran an online class free of cost for the people who would log in. However, he said that, I would appreciate if you would make a donation to the NHS, the National Health Services of UK. And he collected £33,000. Now, what happens is, basically, you have a particular dharma, you have compassion, So you do what is appropriate for that. For example, if you're just a teacher, you need to sort of build the solutions which you are going to translate and give to your students within yourself. Or if you are just a student and if you've got other walks of life, just focus on what is it that is in your domain, which you can make a change. Now, what happens in a pandemic like ours, especially with the social media and the newspapers and the television interviews, etc., we are bombarded by things which it's good to know, but it's not something which I have control over. Like there's no point in myself getting very much disturbed as the vaccine. What do I do about the vaccine? There's nothing you can do about the vaccine. But what is in your control, you have to do. So at this particular point in time, one should not get impacted and try to be, be all and end all, trying to find out for yourself what is the solution or things like that. Understand what is your dharma, what is it that you can do, and go ahead and do that. Don't let yourself get lost in all these things. Now, speaking specifically about the yogis, when you told me, when you just mentioned that this conversation is going to be a conversation over a cup of coffee by yogis in confinement. Yogis in confinement has got a very technical term in yoga. Confinement is called dharana. So in the third chapter, first sutra, Patanjali explains dharana, which is concentration. Desha bandha chittasya dharana. Your consciousness getting confined in a particular place is dharana. So nature has given us a solution wherein it has enabled you to get into the state of dharana through staying alone. And what is the next follow? If you continue that state of dharana, tatra pratyaya ekatanata dhyanam, this leads to dhyanam. So you have got an excellent opportunity to get into that state of dhyana. Now I will use something which I think it was the mayor of Chicago, probably 10 years ago, used the word. I think it was Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago. In 2008, he used the word, let's not have a good crisis go to waste. You remember that? So here, what to say, I'm not trying to belittle everything, but what I'm saying is that you have an opportunity. You can get frustrated, you can get angry, you want to get out of it, etc. That's one way. The other way is, yes, I am sort of confined in the house. Can I be further confined within the body and further confined within one part of the body so that it starts to become dharana, and from there goes to dhyana?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a wonderful segue for me to ask, what are the things that we can learn from this pandemic? And you already have told us what you learn in your asana practice about the lungs, but what other things can we learn from this crisis? About our attachment, maybe? About our equanimity, maybe? About what does it mean to accept this situation? What would it mean?
So, when you accept a situation, you are not in what is called klesha. Klesha is, if you know, raga, dvesha, abnivesha, avidya, smita. These are the kleshas. Now, when you are in that state, wherein you are in that klesha, you are attached. Now the question is, what do you mean by attached, right? So I would try to say attachment is something that you are thinking about it even when it's not present. Yes, you can have, when you meet somebody, you like somebody, you can get attached to somebody, but if you hold on to that when you are not in front, you are away, and there's no reason for you to be thinking about that. If you keep on thinking, that's attachment, right? Now, what this pandemic starts to teach us is that what we thought was very integral part of us, my name, my stature, my position in the hierarchy of my organization, etc. All those things are no longer available with you. So that's where you first start to learn. Incidentally, in India, most of the people in our class would not be working in the house. The housework would be done by somebody who comes and does the stuff, cleaning, washing, etc. Now it's a time when everybody of our class would actually be doing the work at home, cleaning, washing, etc. So this is also getting us to say that, hey, something which we thought we would never tend to do, we would start to get doing. So we start to appreciate the things. Now I can tell you with certainty that once the maids and the help is allowed to come into the house, I'm sure the people in the house are going to do a puja or an arti of them to say, hey, welcome back, So it basically gives you an understanding of the work other people are doing, right? So there is a whole lot of things which come in terms of that you did not require all the things you thought. Now, in this time of pandemic, when you're not able to go out, what would be the purpose of a fantastic car that you have? You see, so you start getting stripped of what you think makes you and makes you what you really are, makes you to know what you really are and not what your things are making you to sort of be.
So B.K. Iyengar in Light on Life explains Pratyahara, which is what a state that we are going through now, as bringing the senses in Pratyahara through the metaphor of a rose becoming a bird again. So is this opportunity now of this pandemic to bring freshness, integrity, and maybe a potential for us to go somewhere else? What do you think, because we're getting to the end, toward the end of our time together, what do you think would be after the pandemic? Will our teaching change? Will our relation to each other change? What do you think should be or would be or could be the next step in our yoga life, right?
So I have talked to many people during this pandemic, some students, some teachers who have sort of interacted with me. And many of the people have told the thing which I've just told you, wherein the practice has become longer, we are becoming more tolerant, we are becoming more appreciative of other people's work which has been done. So in that sense, this 2.5 months wherein we have sort of made some certain changes, I think are going to be reflected in future. It's very difficult that we would forget all these things. After I can understand if it happens 1 or 2 days, but after 2.5 months of this changes which we have experienced in ourselves, the tolerance which we are going to have, so all these are going to make changes. I'm sure even the teachers, last 15 days ago, I was attending the meeting which you had with Patricia. She also expressed the same thing, that, you find yourself getting certain changes which, before the pandemic, even in our own practice, we never experienced to this effect. So the pandemic is certainly going to make a change in our behavior going into the future. I am very, very certain about that. And I would probably look forward for the other participants to sort of think about it even themselves, even if they don't articulate, did it not make a change in your behavior?
So you expect that your teaching will change?
I would believe so.
And do you have any idea how, or what would you suggest us to look at?
Okay, so in these 70 days of lockdown, I've had only one student, and that student was myself, right? So I am learning something in the pose, and when I articulate that, that becomes the instructions. And when the next day when I go and I find I'm not getting that effect, I remember that instruction and say, hey, this is what I need to do. So I am teaching myself. Now this teaching of myself over a period of time is going to translate to the teaching which is going to come out to the students in the class. So there would be a change, certainly in the change.
Yeah. So I'm going to open it soon in a minute to a question from our audience, but I just wanted to ask you before that, is there anything you would like to tell us that I haven't asked that seems really important to you at this moment?
No, I think I spoke too much.
You gave us a lot of wisdom. Thank you very much. But so I'm going to ask people if they have questions to raise their virtual hands, and we have now 10 minutes for those questions, and then we'll come back to Birjoo and we'll close. So if anybody has a question, if not, I have many questions, but I would hope that some of us have questions, and please raise your virtual hand so that we can, and Lisa, help me see, because I don't see everybody on this. We have more than 300 people on this call, so I don't see most of them. So if there is anybody that wants to lift.
I am looking at my participant list. I don't see any hands yet, but I'm keeping an eye out.
Okay, so is there anybody with Lakshmi? Lakshmi, could you, so unmute yourself, Lakshmi. Can you unmute yourself? You are not unmuted. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, yes, here you are. Okay.
Namaste to all of you. It was a wonderful opportunity to hear you, Birjoo, after a very long time. Fantastic explanations for everything. And I really, really miss your classes here. And I'm really unfortunate. I wanted to ask you on the importance of Brahmari with reference to strengthening the chest, not only the top chest, but also the diaphragm area. So this is one question I just want to ask you.
Since this is a what you call a practical question pertaining to only to you, maybe we'll take it offline.
Okay.
So that
all
a more
right.
general question. Yeah, we can certainly catch up. Maybe
okay.
on Google Talk.
All right. Thank you, Birjoo. And it's lovely talking to you. I'm so happy that, you know, you came on this and I got the opportunity to meet you. Thank you very much. And thank you for arranging this program.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. Anybody else has a hand raised for a virtual hand raised? So do we have somebody? No?
Me, Julie. Rahel.
Julie? Yeah, hi, Julie.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask a question? Yes, please.
Yeah, so in this pandemic, I have to practice at home and I try to focus, but there's always things coming out in my mind. I can't focus. So what do you do about it?
Okay. Julie, what I would ask you is that when you are getting disturbed, you will observe your breath becomes harsh. Now the breath becomes harsh because of the position also that you are in. Now, say for example, you are sitting for pranayama. I'll just give you an example, or it could be in Sarvangasana. Now, the moment you find yourself, your breath becoming hard, if you observe your shoulders, you will find that they are coming to the front. Now, if you are able to move the shoulders back as if to open out the chest, you'll find your breathing becoming soft. Now, the moment the breathing starts to become soft, you will be able to understand that your mind becomes more and more quieter and more silent, and you will not get distracted. Distraction, when the distractions happen, your breathing will be disturbed. That's what we would call a kind of a lead indicator. You know, they use the word lead indicator, that before you realize that you have been disturbed, your breath will become disturbed first. You will observe your breath becoming disturbed first. So how can you get your breath to become soft? Then you will not have this disturbance. This is a very practical suggestion, and I'm sure it will work. Does that help you, Julie?
Yeah,
At least
I'll
you
try
know
it.
an idea what you need to do. Yeah. So
Yeah,
if you're in
I'll try it.
Sarvangasana, if you're in Sarvangasana, try to adjust yourself so that in the position you have settled in, your breathing is inaudible.
Inaudible.
Yeah, you should not hear it. So that would be the correct position, and then these thoughts will not come. And the moment the thoughts, before you become aware of the thoughts rising, your breathing would have become harsh. So if you observe the breath and keep it soft, these kind of disturbances will not come. That which will disturb your mind. Of course, the doorbell will still ring, but you will not get agitated about it. The telephone might still ring, but you will not get agitated. Okay, Julie.
Right. Yeah. And also get kind of worried, like, and things like that.
So,
Yes. Again, when you are in the state of worry, observe your body position. Now, the moment you are up, opening out your chest, rolling your shoulders back, like I told you, you'd find that at that point, your mind will stop, having that sense of worry. It's all about position.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
very interestingly, you are talking about the power of yoga, right? You are talking about the power of as you started with that, with bringing what Bikesa Iyengar told you. If you have that ability to lift the position of your body, something will change in your mind, something will change in your breath. So we're back to that position and to the power of yoga, to the power of our practice to make us aware, as you said, very aware of those changes. And so you have communicated that very well to us. So you started about communication, telling us about communication, that a good teacher communicates well to people in front. You have done that very well. And Julie's question brings that back to us. How much a change in just a little change, just opening the sternum from the bottom to the top will change your attitude, your breath, and your attitude to what's happening right now. Yeah. So do we have anybody else which is asking a question?
Rahel, there's Ingrid is first. Ingrid Plunkett.
Yes.
Okay, Ingrid, ask the question.
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. So my question has to do with how the coronavirus pandemic has become very polarized politically in the US. And I find myself getting very angry even after practice, working around this polarization and a sense that I'm right, and very difficult to understand the other side, which is minimizing the pandemic and even mocking people who are going out in masks, and finding it very difficult to manage the conflict around that, which is playing out here.
I do appreciate what you are saying. I can understand what you are saying, that there is a kind of hardening of each person's position vis-a-vis the others. So if you are really worried about what can happen because of this pandemic, and there are others who sort of take it lightly, this is creating a bit of anger within you, right? So again, I know I should not be advising, but if that perspective comes that what is your dharma, and I sense in the sense of what you are doing as a professional, what you are doing, like for example, as a mother, what you would be doing, or as a daughter, what you would be doing, that becomes your dharma. So based on that dharma, do what is required and just move forward, because otherwise you are getting into what is called an echo chamber, where your point of view and people like yours keep bothering you and the other people. So the best thing is you cannot change them. What you can do is bring that change yourself, and that comes by the practice of certain asanas, primarily the inversions, the back bends, supported back bends, and the supported forward bends. So this is where the changes will occur. Like I said, the important thing is how can you change your psychomental state. We know we can change our psychomental state by positioning our body in a particular manner. You go, let's say you go into Viparit Karni. I hope you are aware of that. Yes, Ingrid? So once
Yes.
you are in Viparit Karni and you stay there in that Viparit Karni for 10 minutes, would you have that anger? You see? So these are the changes by which it's wrong for me to, because I do not understand the condition which you are in. I am not really aware of the environment in which you are in. Because in India, we don't have that. In India, most of the people have sort of agreed to follow what the Prime Minister is saying. But what I can understand that, but at least try out. And when you are in Viparit Karni, after 10 minutes, find out whether you have that same anger remaining within you. because we are trying to solve the problems which we do not have the ability to solve. We can only take care of ourselves. We can take care of our family. We can take care of our friends. We can avoid going out of the house. We can prevent our elderly from going out to the house. But I cannot change someone who wants to go out of the house. Right? But it is in our control to be able to control what we can. So that's what I meant by saying compassion with dharma. But I'm not here to advise you because I don't know the situation which you are in. But please do try.
Pardon. We have two more questions, and so we'll take those questions. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Two more questions. Who is the person who is asking?
This is Suman here.
Suman, yeah. So,
sir, if you still have time, can we quickly explain? When you explained, we can increase the amount of time we stay in a posture by reducing or staggering the mental disturbances. If I got it right, something like that.
You slow down your mental disturbances. Your ability to stay in the pose becomes longer. So as you stay, you'll stay longer, which is the definition of anti-fragile. As you age, your life expectancy increases.
Okay.
And that you can slow down that disturbances by ensuring that when you make the right adjustment, your breathing becomes softer and inaudible compared to what it was prior to the adjustment. That's the adjustment.
Thank you, sir.
So do we have another question? We said we'll take one more question, and then we were going to take one more question, Birjoo. So and then we'll come back and we'll close.
Have Martine, Rahel?
Excuse me?
You have Martine Goldberg.
Martin Goldberg, yeah, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. That is so powerful. I had more of a question that I feel with this pandemic, how because of the fear and the unknown and the fact that we're confined, I feel that the heart center is really tight, right? So would you recommend except for the breathing, more of a heart opening practice to try to release that tightness, that feel that when the heart center is tight, it radiates throughout the whole body, right? So I just wanted to hear what you think about a heart-centered practice, an chest opener. So that's my question.
So one of the poses which I mentioned to Julie, Ingrid, sorry, I mentioned to Ingrid was, Viparit Karni. So the poses which really help you are going to be things like the inversions. Okay. So when you are doing a supported Shirshasana, like doing rope Shirshasana, or if you're doing supported Sarvangasana, or if you're doing supported Viparit Karni, supported Setubandha Sarvangasana, Viparit Dandasana, these poses are going to sort of help you to soften the diaphragm. Like when you are talking about the tightness in the heart, essentially one of the thing is that if you are able to soften the diaphragm, so any posture which gives you softening of the diaphragm, and some of the postures which I've mentioned exactly do that, you would be able to get that calming, quietening effect. Does it make sense, Marty?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to just ask you one more question before we close, and are you not teaching online? A lot of people have been asking me, are you teaching online in Mumbai? Can we get onto your schedule, and will that be available to some of us, to all of us?
I think I answered that when I said that I have only one student during this pandemic.
No,
I'm teaching myself. So I'm not teaching online classes as of now.
So maybe that's something you could consider. But in any case, thank you so much, Birjoo, for your wisdom and all the story, the insight, and what you just said now about to Ingrid and to Martine about the power of our certain position. And here in the States, we are going through very difficult times. because of the polarization and also because of the pandemic and because of what's happening in our geopolitical society. So this is a very difficult time for us, and that's and the wisdom and the insight that you just share about what is in my karma, what is it that I can do, and what is it that, how should I take care of myself before I try to take care of others, is really, I think, very, very important. So I want to thank you again for that. I want to thank the audience that came for so many countries. And I want to say that it's together that we will face adversity. So it's like together. This is a group of yogis coming together to learn from each other and how to face that adversity. So I want to thank also the Iyengar Association of New England and Artemis Yoga for their support. You need a community to be able to create in this world. We need to remember that we are all interconnected, and it is in our interconnection that our creativity and healing can flourish. This interconnection, we shouldn't forget it. If a lot of people try to make us forget that, we shouldn't forget that. So I want to say that we have done this virtual coffee every 2 weeks from the start of the pandemic, and now we're going to move to a different, and now as our different countries are a little bit opening, tentatively opening a little bit, we will be moving more to a monthly schedule for the next few months. So I'm pleased to announce that our next guest speaker will come from Taiwan. Gita Beshgerd has been in Taiwan since the beginning of the pandemic, where she's confined. She's waiting to come back to Canada. Gita is the author of The Gift of Consciousness, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and she will be our guest on June 28 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so Boston time. In July, the date to be announced, we will host Christian Pisano from France. So please stay tuned for this announcement. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming and for this uplifting talk. And again, I think it's all together and staying connected and creating those experiences that our yoga can help us move forward in this time of crisis. So thank you very much, Virgil Mehta, and thank you everybody for coming. We're going to close the meeting right now. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Rahel.
Thank you, Virgil Mehta. Thank you so much.
Thank you.